I'm Shannon Elizabeth Eastman. I'm the host of the Work That Matters podcast. These are conversations that take place at the intersection of personal and business growth. I have a guest who's been here a couple times before, Bob Quinn. He's a financial advisor, and his passion, his expertise, his mission is working with you, people like you and I, to create wealth, build wealth. So he knows a lot about money. I was chatting with Bob about 6 weeks ago when the conversation moved into this insight that I still say to myself. Bob said, the degree of friction in your business is directly proportional to the anxiety that you carry around finance and money. And that really, really landed with me. And I guess I was thinking, what else don't I know? What else don't you know? We're business owners, we're entrepreneurs, we're leaders in our own rights. We have an area of expertise, but how many times does our areas of expertise go from what our business is about or what our career path and choices are to wealth and finance and investments? So I asked Bob to come and do a series with me on creating wealth. And this one is on the inheritance triangle. Didn't even know inheritance had one, but it's an interesting conversation. I would describe Bob as a renegade and a contrarian, maybe a self-proclaimed contrarian, although I've never heard him say it, but I'll ask him the next time I see him. He has no time for the status quo. It's probably why we get on so well. He has a very practical and candid way of seeing things, and I enjoy his company, and I enjoy his perception of the world and money in general. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. If money's on the brain and wealth and understanding these different areas are on the brain, then yeah, this conversation is timely. So I will wish you an enjoyable 30 minutes. It's my intention that, you don't leave with notes and notes of things that are new to you. I'm not sure that happens too often, but that you would have a shift in perception and maybe take something away like I did from Bob 6 weeks ago that just sits with you and helps you see the world differently, maybe make different choices in the day-to-day, which you and I both know is how big change is made anyway. So enjoy Bob. He's fun. His details, his links, his website, they're all below in the comments section for you to follow up on. And he's done a lot of interviews and writing, RTE, the Irish Times. There's a lot happening over there. So if you enjoy this one, you might find those of interest as well. Right, I will hand you over to the conversation, the inheritance triangle. So it's great to have you back, Bob, particularly talking about the inheritance triangle, because the truth is, before we agreed to do the show, I didn't know an inheritance had a triangle.
Yeah, there you go. It's great to be back. That's the first thing. Yeah, there are three parties that we need to discuss when we're talking.
Inheritance. Why is it so complicated?
Well, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
Hannah's going to give me some money.
Yeah, and who else is she going to give it to? Who are involved? Families. I don't know about your family, but I'm one of 9 children. Families are complicated. They're complex. You're dealing with different personalities, different emotional structures and approaches. And when it comes along to that thing, which we supposedly shouldn't talk about or don't want to talk about, but in reality, we actually quite enjoy talking about it, and that thing being death, dying death and bereavement, and what that death will do to a family. That's it's a conversation we should have, and we should have this with open arms, because it's going to happen. Let's just face facts. It'll happen. Let's talk about it. You don't have to dwell on it, but you need to discuss it.
No, it's fair, and I am looking forward to this, because one of the things I really enjoyed about our last conversation is this idea that, let me see, I wrote it down. Your degree of friction in your business is directly proportional to the anxiety that you contain about your finances.
And that line really rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Oh, it is. No, it does. And it lands and it resonates. And so I was thinking, what else do I not know about wealth building. And so inheritance, I kind of thought, Jesus, what is he going to have to say for 30 minutes about inheritance? But the triangle shows me that I've only got one of the 3 points acknowledged. So the other 2 points, what are they? Why don't you introduce the triangle, the inheritance triangle to us?
The inheritance triangle, we're looking at benefactors versus beneficiaries, those giving, those receiving. Number
Okay,
2,
so me and my nana. That's the
you and your
first
nana,
point of the
exactly.
triangle.
Then we're looking at family fun versus family feuds. Because you know what? The Irish court system is chocker block with families tearing lumps out of one another, trying to get whatever someone deems to be fair or equal or equitable. And a lot of times you have to keep in mind
Yeah.
what's fair isn't necessarily equal. But if the conversation hasn't been had before the event itself, then it's down to interpretation. It's very subjective as to what's fair and what's equal.
The courts are chocker block.
Yeah, the courts are chocker block with families tearing lumps out of one another. And it's all because it was never discussed as to what was fair or equal. And remember, fair isn't the same as equal. But if you leave it to the next generation to decide, it becomes a very subjective thing. And we're talking about friction raises its ugly head if this conversation hasn't been had before the event itself. And then the third thing we're talking about, the third aspect to the inheritance triangle, is that we're looking at different attitudes and insights of the various different generations, from boomers right the way down to where are we now? Gen Y, is it, or something else? It's kind of hard to keep track. But attitudes to inheritance are changing at phenomenal speed right now. And they're going to be compelled to change for the next generation, those middle-aged people, because we've typically taken on higher levels of debt than our parents. It's taken longer to pay down mortgage debt. We have car finance coming out our ears. We're in debt for longer. And remember, the longer you're in debt for, the less opportunity you have to accumulate assets. Because what should be going into increasing your asset base and your savings and your pensions and whatever else, your holiday homes, is now gone towards PCP finance and big bloated mortgages. So that generation won't necessarily have the same pot of money that perhaps their parents currently have or had to gift to the next generation. So attitudes will be, well, look, I'd like to give my children some money when I pop my clogs, but the truth is there will not be any there if I live to be 100. So there's a whole lot of factors that need to be considered based on who you are, what stage in life you're at, what kind of wealth you've accumulated. But one thing we need to agree on is this: the conversation has to be had before the event itself. That's non-negotiable.
So I've been taking notes. Well, actually, I've been drawing pictures. So I have this really cool triangle, and at the top I put me and my nana. God,
Yeah.
May Moore from Terranure. So me and my nana are at the top of the triangle, and then in the bottom left corner I put family fun and family feuds. Did I get that right?
Exactly.
And then in the bottom right corner I have the word people and their attitudes by generations.
Exactly, yeah.
So who you are, what stage of life you're at, and the amount of wealth that you have to either pass on or not pass on sits around and inside this triangle. So is there a particular, I see 3 parts to the inheritance now, thank you.
Yeah.
Which one do I start with, and how do I approach them? And what happens when the fit hits the shen?
Yeah, let's start with benefactors and beneficiaries, because I guess ultimately you and your nana, for instance, I don't know if your nana's still alive, if you ever had the conversation.
Away, God love her.
Yeah. Okay. So, maybe grandchildren and grandparents are less connected, if you like, to that conversation about passing on the assets. And the assets could be, the 75-year-old teapot that your granny has been taking from generation to generation, or it could be a big pile of money that she had in the Cayman Islands and she wants to leave it to someone. But it's typically going to be parents to children as opposed to grandparents to grandchildren that have that conversation. So I guess I'd like to unpack maybe what we're looking at here, because we all know that story where, oh yeah, sure. And then didn't he die? And he died without a will. And he was a phenomenally wealthy man, but his son didn't speak to his other son, and. And before you know it, out of, for whatever motivation reasons, the only people that do well from the fallout of an estate gone wild are barristers and solicitors. Nobody else.
Estate's gone wild. I totally love that. Estate's gone wild.
Yeah. It could be a TV series, couldn't it? A reality show.
It could be a TV series, but now it'd be funny now if it was in Ireland. You'd have a totally different flavor if it was, what's the Longford?
Yeah.
Is that the middle country?
Ish, yeah.
Compared to, let's say, California. Anyway, I digress. Carry on. So we've got Estates Gone Wild benefiting all the barristers and the solicitors. The kids, now I understand the family feuds. Okay.
And family feuds kind of link into, but remember too, Shannon, I suppose, most parents will spend their lives ensuring that their families can live with a degree of harmony within the family unit. I know my own parents who are thankfully alive and kicking and all that type of stuff. They've made great efforts over a generation to ensure that me and my 8 brothers and sisters get along. And yeah, sure, it doesn't happen all the time. And we will be fighting and shouting and screaming, particularly around Christmas time and big events when we're able to get together, that is. But parents do their damnedest to keep people together over the course of their lives. And there are so many parents out there that I'm going to speculate, because it can only be speculation, that should they know what happened after their deaths, where they went to the grave with their families all sort of having good relationships for the most part with one another, their children, so within siblings, and then on their death, because they forgot to clarify or state or whatever it might be in relation to what their wishes were, or because they weren't prepared to have the conversation, because they didn't want to upset anyone, that they figured, you know what, once I pop my clogs, not my problem, I'm gone. Yeah. But it is such I'd use the term chicken SHIT approach, really. You can't do that to your family. If
You're
there's
allowed to take shit on my podcast, by the way.
Okay. Right, a bunch of expletives are now about to be rolled out. There'll be a lot of bleeping on this podcast, I think. But you get the point. That it's because of what is left unsaid that then you have the siblings saying, well, I know mom wanted me to have the teapots. No, she didn't. She told my daughter, her grandchild, that she could have it. And because of stuff which is left unsaid, the only way we solve this is not through mediation or arbitration. It's straight into the court system, barristers, solicitors, thousands of euro later, stress, emotional anxiety, whatever else you're having, and it destroys family relations forever more. That's a real shame. That's what that does, is it causes more than money. You can't put a price on a good relationship with your sibling long term. Well, maybe you can. How much do you want? If I said, look, 500,000, give you 500,000 at the expense of your brother or sister, would you take it? Maybe people are like, yeah, I'm not that close to him anyhow. Big deal. But you know what? The world maybe rotates in a certain way that the more aggro we have within the family unit, perhaps it's not good for us anyhow.
So I get it now. I mean, it's only been a few minutes into this conversation, and I'm seeing that this isn't linear by any means. I fully appreciate the benefactor at the top of the triangle, the family fun, family feuds, although I definitely prefer Estates Gone Wild. Talk to me about attitudes by generation. So we've probably got at least 2, probably 3 generations involved, would you say, on average? What do we need? What do we need to be mindful of? What do we need to know about them?
Primarily, what we're looking at now, boomers, people who at this point in time are the older generation. They're at they're in their final third of their life, if I can describe it like that. And Irish boomers, whatever about their international comparisons, typically like to have spent a life saving.
Yeah.
They didn't have access to credit like I suppose the next generation to them had sort of 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so they always understood that if you wanted something, you saved up for it, you put the money aside, and then you went out and you bought the thing, whether it's sort of the new car or the holiday. The next generation ended up kind of borrowing because it was so easy to get access to credit. So there is that in itself, just that one aspect of how easy was it to get access to credit or not? So my parents raised the 9 of us back in the 80s when mortgage interest rates were 16, 17, 18%. It was a phenomenal burden on people, and taking on debt is something that no one entered into without due consideration because they had to give a lot of thought. Whereas with 0% PCP car deals and all that type of stuff that people don't necessarily consider the impact that's having today. But so the attitude between the boomers and the Gen X's, I guess what we're talking about, is typically boomers spend a life slowly accumulating wealth. And because of that, they have developed, if you like, a relatively cautious and stable way of spending money. They don't go out and blow it typically. And these are all stereotypes and generalizations. So you can say, well, my dad, and there are always going to be exceptions, but they typically will not go and blow their cash in the last 10, 15, 20 years of their lives. And they will do what they can to hold on to as much as they can to gift it to their beneficiaries on their death. Now, their beneficiaries are Gen X's or Gen Xers, as the case might be. You know, between probably 40, 55, something like that. And the Gen Xers actually don't want their parents to keep their money to gift to them on their debts. And that's DEATHS, not DEBTS, just to be clear, in case it doesn't come across the audio. But the conversation doesn't happen. An awful lot of the Middle Ages, if you like, the Gen X's, want their parents to live a comfortable life. They've seen what they've done for the last 40 years in denying themselves the comforts and the finer things. And look, go on that sort of cruise or go on that fly first class to Australia to see your grandkids. But the grandparents won't do that because of how they become so conditioned to carefully spending their money.
Yeah.
But their beneficiaries don't want a big wad of money set aside at the expense of their parents' luxuries, if you like, and comfort in their final. Yeah. And so that's a different attitude. And then the Gen X's, the people who are middle-aged right now, have already stated, look, I'm not bloody well leaving anything to the kids. I'm spending it because it's mine. And I'm going to spend this. And look, I put a good roof over the kids' head and I gave them good education. They're on their own.
And that attitude is
wild.
Thus you have the millennials going, oh, what is going on with us? Nobody cares.
And you've destroyed the planet and it's going to implode by the time. And they might be onto something as well. Being a millennial right now is quite an anxious position to occupy.
Yeah, agreed. I have 3 different lines of thoughts, and I just wanted to come back to this idea. Well, first of all, I love that you put this into a triangle, the inheritance triangle. It's a nice 3-part story that I can get my head around, and now I can see the value of having the tough conversations. I do think that you need to somehow get Estates Gone Wild into one of your books that you're writing there, Bob. I think that would make for a great title.
It might target a particularly different type of audience. They might have, their expectations might be a little misplaced. Estates Gone Wild.
I guess I want to wrap up this conversation by saying, I'm looking at this inheritance triangle, which I love and now understand. Where do I begin as the Gen X? How do I have the conversations with the boomers and or the Gen Ys? And is that something I should be doing on my own, or should, like, I would imagine you would make that much easier than me on my own, fumbling through the conversation. Do you pimp yourself out for those type of services?
No, absolutely. Having conversations with families is something I very much appreciate and enjoy. And it's in a controlled environment where it's not, a bottle and a half of wine into it over Christmas dinner and somebody says the wrong thing or it's misinterpreted. And well, it's your tone. You tell by your tone. I get given out to all the time because of my tone. My wife in particular, man, oh man. Anyhow, that's for a different podcast.
I'm laughing because it sounds exactly like my family.
It sounds like most
have a whiskey in at Christmas.
yeah, exactly. But there's one line I want you to say on the podcast today. My name is Shannon and I am going to die.
My name is Shannon and I am going to die.
Isn't that a bizarre line to say?
Yes.
But you know what? So far you've managed to keep that at bay, but it's going to happen someday. We don't know when, we don't know how, but starting the conversation in relation to it is, I want people to envisage your last day on the planet. And while this might sound really morbid, the issue we have within families is once the dad or the mother or the brother or the sister-in-law or the grandchild or whoever might be tut-tuts at the conversation about, well, look, when I'm not here anymore, when the day has come and someone goes, oh, don't be talking about that. Oh, don't, what are you bringing that up for? Once there's a tut-tutter in the family, the conversation typically doesn't blossom. Yeah. So start with the people won't tut-tut or dismiss to begin with. If you want to do it over the Christmas dinner table, but you've got 10 or 12 or 6, whatever number of people COVID restrictions allow, if you have an audience and you're not entirely sure as to how they feel in relation to the topic of conversation, start small. It's the obvious place. Start canvassing support for this conversation. Talk to your brothers, talk to your sisters, talk to your mother if you know that she's kind of pragmatic about this type of stuff. My mother, we'll talk about this till the cows come home. My dad, not so much. He takes a lot more coaxing and encouragement. But set the scene where there's enough people nodding approvingly in relation to the conversation.
Smart.
Yeah. And then the tut-tutters, as I call them, those people who are quick to dismiss, will almost be standing back on, geez, I didn't think this would sort of be universally approved. The conversation can go wherever you need to go then, because every family is different. Every family, the interrelationships within families are wildly different from one family to the next. And it might be quite an easy conversation to have. It might be fraught with decades of anxieties in relation to, well, you gave my brother something back in the 80s and I never got the thing. And there may be some things that need to be addressed, but start in smaller numbers, ease the conversation in. And the line, my name is Bob and I am going to die, is something that Dr. Catherine Mannix raised to a floor of 500 people, the Irish Hospice Foundation's annual conference in October of 2019. And the room burst into sniggers of laughter. But then she brought it up and said, well, you know what? It's true. It's going to happen. So there are definites and maybes in life. This is one of the definites. If you spent a lifetime diligently planning, whether it's financial planning or life planning or whatever other type of planning, and you have overlooked or decided to stick your head in the sand in relation to the death piece, then come on. It's not too late. You're still alive. Deal with it now.
I'm on it. I've taken lots of notes. I'm very uncomfortable. My armpits are a little bit sweaty. Just at the thought of approaching this, my fears would be the perception of me is my... I'll use my nana. Does my nana think I'm trying to rush her out death's door so I can seize her goods? Yeah. That's definitely not the intention. But I really appreciate the different values of the Gen X's and the boomers and the Ys, and God love the millennials. Hand on heart, God love the millennials. Because I think you're right. This Gen Xer, pointing to myself, I don't want them to squeeze their quality of life so they can leave me a lump sum on their death.
Yeah.
I want them to spend it all and enjoy, because I'm good.
Can I make one other point in relation
Yeah.
to it? Just came into my head. You should probably, the benefactor, the person gifting,
Yeah.
I suggest they need to be explicit as to whether there are any terms and conditions coming attached to that inheritance. Because an awful lot of beneficiaries view inheritance as, oh, this is my parents' life work. This is everything they did to get to the point, just at the point where they died. This represents their life. And if it's an asset, a physical asset, whether it's a house or an expensive piece of jewelry or whatever, that an awful lot of people, while it mightn't suit them to keep the house, and the house might need some work, and you may have to pay an inheritance tax bill or something, that there's often an onus or a sense of responsibility. Well, I can't sell the house. It's been in the family for 4 generations.
Assumed expectations that are rarely real. Assumed expectations that are rarely real. No, that's a great point. A really great point. Oh, Bob, it's always great having you on here. And I'm going to announce, because you've already agreed to it, we've got a series of wealth building with you. And the next topic that I'm bringing you back for, that I'm particularly excited about, is triple D.
Triple D, yes.
Divorce, dementia, and death.
All the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff. I mean, you're just fun little laughs, aren't you? I'm looking forward to it because I want to learn from my own decisions. I was married 17 years. I don't know if you know that.
17 years.
And I'm not sure I handled my divorce finances as well as I could have. So I'm looking forward to that one. Thank you for today. I love the inheritance triangle. I understand it. And
excellent.
I'll let you know how it goes.
Sounds good. Alrighty.
Cheers, Bob.
Good conversations. Cheers.
The Work That Matters podcast, it's brought to you by ShannonEastman.com.